Autobiography of Helen Keller. Helen Adams Keller was an American author, political activist, and lecturer. She was the first deaf-blind person to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. Helen Keller is one of the most memorable women in history. Despite being blind as well as deaf, she learned to communicate and lived a life devoted to helping others. Her faith, determination, and spirit helped her to accomplish far more than many people expected. In fact, she won the admiration of famous figures from all over the world. The following offers a glimpse into the inspirational life of Helen Keller. Early life and family. Keller was born on 27 June 1880 in Tuscumbia, Alabama. Keller was the first of two daughters born to Arthur H. Keller and Catherine Adams Keller. Keller's father had served as an officer in the Confederate Army during the Civil War. She also had two older stepbrothers. The family was not particularly wealthy and earned income from their cotton plantation. Later, Arthur became the editor of a weekly local newspaper, the North Alabamian. Keller was born with her senses of sight and hearing and started speaking when she was just 6 months old. She started walking at the age of 1. Loss of sight and hearing. Keller lost both her sight and hearing at just 19 months old. In 1882, she contracted an illness called brain fever by the family doctor that produced a high body temperature. The true nature of the illness remains a mystery today, though some experts believe it might have been scarlet fever or meningitis. Within a few days after the fever broke, Keller's mother noticed that her daughter didn't show any reaction when the dinner bell was rung or when a hand was waved in front of her face. As Keller grew into child, she developed a limited method of communication with her companion Martha Washington, the young daughter of the family cook. The two had created a type of sign language. By the time Keller was 7, they had invented more than 60 signs to communicate with each other. During this time, Keller had also become very wild and unruly. She would kick and scream when angry and giggle uncontrollably when happy. She tormented Martha and inflicted raging tantrums on her parents. Many family relatives felt she would be institutionalized. Keller's teacher Annie Sullivan. Keller worked with her teacher Annie Sullivan for 49 years from 1887 until Sullivan's death in 1936. In 1932, Sullivan experienced health problems and lost her eyesight completely. A young woman named Polly Thompson, who had begun working as a secretary for Keller and Sullivan in 1914, became Keller's constant companion upon Sullivan's death. Looking for answers and inspiration, Keller's mother came across a travelogue by Charles Dickens' American Notes in 1886. She read of the successful education of another deaf and blind child, Laura Bridgman, and soon dispatched Keller and her father to Baltimore, Maryland to see specialist Dr. J. Julian Chisholm. After examining Keller, Chisholm recommended that she see Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, who was working with deaf children at the time. Bell met with Keller and her parents and suggested that they travel to the Perkins Institute for the Blind in Boston, Massachusetts. There, the family met with the school's director, Michael Anagonos. He suggested Keller work with one of the institute's most recent graduate, Sullivan. On March 3, 1887, Sullivan went to Keller's home in Alabama and immediately went to work. She began by teaching 6-year-old Keller finger spelling, starting with the word doll to help Keller understand the gift of a doll she had brought along. Other words would follow. At first, Keller was curious, then defiant, refusing to cooperate with Sullivan's instruction. When Keller did cooperate, Sullivan could tell that she wasn't making the connection between the objects and the letters spelled out in her hand. Sullivan kept working at it, forcing Keller to go through the regimen. As Keller's frustration grew, the tantrums increased. Finally, Sullivan demanded that she and Keller be isolated from the rest of the family for a time so that Keller could concentrate only on Sullivan's instruction. They moved to a cottage on the plantation. In a dramatic struggle, Sullivan taught Keller the word water. She helped her make the connection between the object and the letters by taking Keller out to the water pump and placing Keller's hand under the spout. While Sullivan moved the lever to flush cool water over Keller's hand, she spelled out the word water on Keller's other hand. Keller understood and repeated the word in Sullivan's hand. She then pounded the ground, demanding to know its letter name. Sullivan followed her, spelling out the word into her hand. Keller moved to other objects with Sullivan in tow. By nightfall, she had learned 30 words. In 1905, Sullivan married John Massey, an instructor at Harvard University, a social critic and a prominent socialist. After the marriage, Sullivan continued to be Keller's guide and mentor. When Keller went to live with the Masseys, they both initially gave Keller their undivided attention. Gradually, however, Annie and John became distant to each other as Annie's devotion to Keller continued unabated. After several years, the couple separated, though were never divorced. Education. In 1890, Keller began speech classes at the Horace Mann School for the Deaf in Boston. She would toil for 25 years to learn to speak so that others would understand her. From 1894 to 1896, Keller attended the Wright Humason School for the Deaf in New York City. There, she worked on improving her communication skills and studied regular academic subjects. Around this time, Keller became determined to attend college. In 1896, she attended the Cambridge School for Young Ladies, a preparatory school for women. As her story became known to the general public, Keller began to meet famous and influential people. One of them was the writer Mark Twain, who was very impressed with her. They became friends. Twain introduced her to his friend Henry H. Rogers, a Standard Oil executive. Rogers was so impressed with Keller's talent, drive, and determination that he agreed to pay for her to attend Radcliffe College. There, she was accompanied by Sullivan, who sat by her side to interpret lectures and texts. By this time, Keller had mastered several methods of communication, including touch lip reading, braille speech, typing, and finger spelling. Keller graduated cum laude from Radcliffe College in 1904 at the age of 24. With the help of Sullivan and Massey, Sullivan's future husband, Keller wrote her first book, The Story of My Life, published in 1905. The memoirs covered Keller's transformation from childhood to 21-year-old college student, social activism. Throughout the first half of the 20th century, Keller tackled social and political issues, including women's suffrage, pacifism, birth control, and socialism. After college, Keller set out to learn more about the world and how she could help improve the lives of others. News of her story spread beyond Massachusetts and New England. Keller became a well known celebrity and lecturer by sharing her experiences with audiences and working on behalf of others living with disabilities. She testified before Congress strongly advocating to improve the welfare of blind people. In 1915, along with renowned city planner George Kessler, she co-founded Helen Keller International to combat the causes and consequences of blindness and malnutrition. In 1920, she helped found the American Civil Liberties Union. When the American Federation for the Blind was established in 1921, Keller had an effective national outlet for her efforts. She became a member in 1924 and participated in many campaigns to raise awareness, money, and support for the blind. She also joined other organizations dedicated to helping those less fortunate, including the Permanent Blind War Relief Fund, later called the American Braille Press. Soon Soon after she graduated from college, Keller became a member of the Socialist Party, most likely due in part to her friendship with John Massey between 1909 and 1921. She wrote several articles about socialism and supported Eugene Debs, a Social Party presidential candidate. Her series of essays on socialism, entitled Out of the Dark, described her views on socialism and world affairs. It was during this time that Keller first experienced public prejudice about her disabilities. For most of her life, the press had been overwhelmingly supportive of her, praising her courage and intelligence. But after she expressed her socialist views, some criticized her by calling attention to her disabilities. One newspaper, the Brooklyn Eagle, wrote that her mistakes sprung out of the manifest limitations of her development. In 1946, Keller was appointed Counselor of International Relations for the American Foundation of Overseas Blind. Between 1946 and 1957, she traveled to 35 countries on 5 continents. In 1955, at age 75, Keller embarked on the longest and most grueling trip of her life, a 40,000-mile, 5-month trek across Asia. Through her many speeches and appearances, she brought inspiration and encouragement to millions of people. The Miracle Worker movie, Keller's autobiography, The Story of My Life, was used as the basis for 1957 television drama The Miracle Worker. In 1959, the story was developed into a Broadway play of the same title, starring Patty Duke as Keller and Annie Bancroft as Sullivan. The two actresses also performed those roles in the 1962 award winning film version of the play. Awards and honors. During her lifetime, she received many honors in recognition of her accomplishments, including the Theodore Roosevelt Distinguished Service Medal in 1936, the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1964, and election to the Women's Hall of Fame in 1965. Keller also received honorary doctoral degrees from Temple University and Harvard University, and from the universities of Glasgow, Scotland, Berlin, Germany, Delhi, India, and Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. She was named an honorary fellow of the Educational Institute of Scotland. Keller died in her sleep on 1st June 1968, just a few weeks before her 88th birthday. Keller suffered a series of strokes in 1961 and spent the remaining years of the life at her home in Connecticut. During her remarkable life, Keller stood as a powerful example of how determination, hard work, and imagination can allow an individual to triumph over adversity. By overcoming difficult conditions with a great deal of persistence, she grew into a respected and world renowned activist who labored for the betterment of others. Life lessons from Helen Keller. Go to your dreams. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Security is mostly a superstition. It does not exist in nature. To avoid danger is no safer in the long run than exposure completely. I often say to people, go after their dreams and turn them into reality. My skeptic would say that's unrealistic, but what's the point of being realistic? Nothing great was ever been achieved by a realist. Albert Einstein was not a realist. The Wright brothers were not realists. Thomas Edison was not realist. The Alexander Graham Bell was certainly not a realist. What is realistic but accepted the self-imposed limitations of the company. Remove the borders, go after your dreams. In the infamous words of Paris Hilton, life is too short to blend. Chase your dreams as it is the last bus of the night. You need a vision. It is a terrible thing to see and have no vision. Do you have a vision, a goal, a plan, a mission for your life? Isaiah wrote, without a vision, the people perish. Great leaders are always great visionaries. They have an internal picture of where you go. They are fixed on their vision. What is your vision? Nothing is impossible. We want to do do anything if we keep it long enough. The beauty of time is that one can achieve almost anything if you hold it long enough. Set your mind on what you want to achieve and do not stop until you get there. They say the utility of the stamp is its ability to remain a while before he gets there. Learn from the stamp, remain to committed to your dream until you get there. The experience is priceless. Life is a series of lessons that are understood to be believed. Knowledge is good, but the experience is invaluable. Learn from all life lessons. Never be afraid to get your hands dirty by to get some first-hand experience. Only experience can bring full understanding. Focus on the positive. Although the world is full of suffering, it is full also of the overcoming of it. Although we could focus on the negative things around us, it does not make a lot of good to us. Helen Keller said, keep your face to the sunshine and you will never see the shadow. I think this is good advice. Decide to see the glass as half full. Things are not getting worse, they are getting better. Hang out with winners. As they say today, it cannot be done, it was done. Winners hang out with the winners. Hang out with negative people will not be caught. Negative people are like vampire. She walked around them to suck the life out of everything. They are always saying as you cannot see why you cannot and how you are going to fail if you try. If you depend too long with this chicken, you will remember that you have the ability as an eagle in the air. Decide to spend time with those who is impossible to believe. Your destiny is in your hands. What I look for is not out there, it is in me. Everything you need to succeed, you already have on the inside of you. Shakespeare wrote, blaming dear Brutus is not in our stars that we are underlings, but in ourselves. The success is yours. The success is yours for the taking, but you have to believe it and you must be convinced that you deserve it. One can never consent to creep when one feels an impulse to rise. Helen Keller. Conclusion. Never forgive up.